Frank Sutton collapsed in his dressing room. A sudden, massive heart attack. He was gone before help could even arrive. To the world it was a shock, but to his wife, now, after decades of silence, his widow at 101 years old has revealed what truly happened. And it's more disturbing than anyone ever imagined. But do you believe Frank Sutton was underrated as an actor? Type 1 for yes or 0 for no in the comments below. Now let's dive right in. Frank Sutton. Tragically, death. The June 28, 1974 evening started just like any other show night at the Beverly Barn Dinner Playhouse in Shreveport, Louisiana. Busboys cleared dinner plates while the audience settled in their seats. They looked forward to an entertaining production of Love, Murray Shisgall's 1964 absurdist comedy. Frank Sutton prepared in his dressing room backstage, unaware these moments would be his last. Tragedy struck the theater at 8 p.m. Sutton collapsed from a massive heart attack in his dressing room just before his stage entrance. Theater officials later confirmed the 50-year-old actor's sudden collapse during his pre-show preparation. Several sources noted that Sutton had been rehearsing in Shreveport since May 1974 for this comedy production, which was planned through July 13th. The event became even more poignant because Sutton had shared a premonition with a fellow actor earlier that week. "If an actor has to die, a theater is the place for him to die," he had said. These words turned prophetic as the celebrated actor never made it to the stage that night. Medical teams rushed to help, but couldn't save him. The Beverly Barn Dinner Playhouse, usually filled with laughter, fell silent as the news reached backstage. The production of Love, that had entertained audiences for 2 weekends, would not see its third. The situation became more heartbreaking because Sutton's wife, Toby Eigler, and their 10-year-old daughter, Amanda, were with him in Shreveport. The New York Times reported that his family had joined him during his theatrical engagement in Louisiana. His 20-year-old son, Joseph, wasn't there, but appeared among the survivors in later obituaries. His family's presence in Shreveport made this professional loss deeply personal. Theater staff faced the difficult task of supporting Sutton's wife and young daughter while managing the waiting audience. The actor had earned fame as the tough Marine Corps Sergeant Carter opposite Jim Nabors in Gomer Pyle. He had moved toward the stage performances after the TV series ended. His family often traveled with him to dinner theaters of all sizes across the country. The audience waited unaware of the backstage tragedy. After some time, Elizabeth Ives Sutton's co-star stepped forward to break the news. Her announcement struck a balance between professionalism and emotion. "It was to have been my privilege to appear with Frank Sutton tonight, but I am sorry to have to tell you that last evening was his last performance. He has taken ill and died," she told the shocked audience. She honored Sutton's dedication to acting. He was an actor and a professional, and he said, and I know it sounds corny, but he said, if any actor has to die, that a theater is the place for him to die. He was a lovely man, and all of you took just a moment of silence for Frank. There will be no show tonight. The audience had come expecting comedy, but participated in an unexpected memorial instead. They left the venue shocked and saddened. Love ended its Beverly Barn run with Sutton's death. The theater promised refunds, though many guests said money was the last thing on their minds as they left. News of Sutton's death quickly reached Shreveport, and then national media outlets with the New York Times covering the story on June 30th. The Beverly Barn Dinner Playhouse became more than just Sutton's final stage. Fans turned it into a memorial site, leaving flowers and tributes outside the theater in the following days. What secret did Frank Sutton reveal to his wife? There was a weight that Frank Sutton carried behind the rough facade of Sergeant Carter, which millions of Americans welcomed into their living rooms each week. However, very few people were aware of this hardship. His troubles with his health were kept a secret until after he had passed away, which provided a particularly moving background for his final days. Sutton had a profound talk with his wife Toby Eigler just a few hours before he had a deadly heart attack at the Beverly Barn Dinner Playhouse. From 1946 till the present day, they were married for over 30 years. According to a number of sources, Sutton eventually disclosed to his wife the information that he had concealed for a long time, which was his chronic cardiac difficulties. It was during this heart-to-heart session that they would have their final, meaningful conversation. Family members have stated that Frank conveyed to Toby his awareness that his illness could not be rectified. However, he made the decision to continue performing and adhered to his packed schedule. Due to the fact that it occurred just one day before the heart attack that ultimately led to his death, the news is even more tragic. It's possible that getting medical assistance sooner would have altered everything. It is possible that he was cognizant of the fact that time was running out, as evidenced by his desire to share this responsibility with his wife. The unexpected passing of Sutton at the age of 50 caused his acquaintances to examine his medical history. It has come to our attention that the actor had been experiencing cardiac problems for a considerable amount of time prior to his deadly attack. According to some who are close to him, he disguised these symptoms because he was concerned about his professional future. One of Frank's friends stated that he had been concealing his symptoms. The last thing he wanted was to frighten anyone, and he certainly did not want to run the danger of losing his job. Unfortunately, that choice ended up costing him everything. This concealment is consistent with what would eventually be revealed by his wife, which was that Frank had previously suffered from heart attacks that he concealed from everyone. Even when these terrifying incidents occurred, the devoted singer continued to keep up with his rigorous schedule of appearances and concerts. In the aftermath of his passing, there were no controversies or surprising disclosures. A mix of poor health choices, ignored warnings, and the pressure of always having to be strong was what ultimately led to the situation. It was the seasoned actor's own stoicism and passion for his job that ultimately led to his downfall. Following his passing, his closest friends and family members provided answers regarding his personality and the final days of his life. His wife Toby did not remarry and began a mission to protect Frank's memory and make sure people remembered not just the actor, but the man. She did not marry anyone else. "I sympathize with him right now. All we have left are good memories together," is what Toby responded when she was asked about the difficulty that her husband was keeping concealed from society. Her statements indicate that he was a loyal husband who, despite the difficulties he had with his health, continued to concentrate on his family and profession until the very end. Sutton's longtime co-star on Gomer Pyle, Jim Neighbors, showed a profound sense of disbelief upon learning of his friend's passing. According to Neighbors, who was speaking from Honolulu, he was a really brilliant man as far as I'm concerned. A remarkable individual who possesses a significant skill. He was a wonderful guy, a very devoted performer, and a wonderful family man. He passed away recently. For a period of 8 years, we collaborated on a daily basis, working for 14 hours each day. The undiscovered cardiac issue that Sutton had is the reason why his passing came as a shock to the entertainment industry. He showed signs of being full of life and energy right up until the moment of his collapse. A clear indication of how effectively the seasoned actor managed to keep his health troubles separate is the distance that exists between his public face and his private fight. Toby Sutton's wife and their children, Amanda, who was 10 years old, and Joseph, who was 20 years old, were all affected by a tremendous loss. They were forced to learn how to live without their husband and father who had abandoned them in such an unexpected manner, despite the fact that they had heard his deathbed confession. If you're passionate about uncovering the real stories behind classic stars, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss an upload. We bring forgotten truths back into the light because these stars deserve to be remembered for who they really were. His wife, revelation at 101. Now that she is 101 years old, his wife has finally chosen to speak up. He allegedly disregarded the warning symptoms, which included chest discomfort, tiredness, and blackouts. The last thing he wanted was to be seen as weak. It seemed to him that he had more time. But what's even worse is that the studio put pressure on him to continue performing, despite the fact that his performance was clearly declining. It was the job that brought him fame that ultimately led him to the brink of insanity. While he was exhausting himself, the business, which had a deep affection for his booming voice and tough guy character, turned a blind eye to his condition. Upon hearing the shocking news of the untimely passing of the cherished actor, Frank Sutton, fans and colleagues were left in a state of shock, with many wondering what transpired in his dying moments. Taking a look at medical records and accounts from witnesses helps to construct a more accurate picture of the events that transpired in Shreveport on that particular evening. According to the findings of the medical examiners, Frank Sutton passed away on June 28, 1974, as a result of a major heart attack. During the time that he was getting dressed in his dressing room at the Beverly Barn Dinner Playhouse in Shreveport, Louisiana, the cardiac incident occurred spontaneously and without any prior warning. It was soon before Sutton was set to act in the comedy Love when he passed out, according to authorities. He was unable to be saved by medical assistance since the heart attack occurred so suddenly. Emergency personnel raced to his aid, but they were unable to bring him back to life. Sutton passed away at the age of 51 or 51 years old, with many accounts varying on the precise number. The disparity in age might be attributed to the fact that several sources are unable to reach a consensus over his exact birth date. Sutton had apparently suffered a heart attack in his dressing room just before he was to go on stage, according to a report that was published in the New York Times. The officials in Shreveport provided support for this claim, stating that his heart stopped beating without any additional variables or unusual circumstances. Before Sutton had a fatal heart attack, we do not have a lot of information regarding his whole medical history. It is quite likely that his cardiac issue was caused by a combination of factors. His job as an actor in both theater and television required him to put in lengthy hours of rehearsals and performances. The passion he showed was evident when in 1966 he entertained soldiers who were serving in the Vietnam War. Over the course of just 8 days, he performed 56 gigs in a variety of war zones, including Da Nang Chu Lai and Phu Bai, among others. A routine like this puts a significant amount of strain on his heart over the course of time. In particular, Sutton was known for his high-energy performances, particularly in his role as the always irritated Sergeant Carter on Gomer Pyle. The position required a lot of physical exertion. He had to yell and execute physical humor, both of which required a significant amount of energy. The intensity of his persona was a reflection of his own work ethic in real life. As I transitioned from television to stage, I had new hurdles. Unlike television, where performers are able to perform many takes, theater work requires a continuous level of intensity throughout each presentation. It was especially challenging to do dinner theater since the presentations came after long travel days, and there was very little relaxation in between performances. In retrospect, Sutton may have survived if he had received alternative medical treatment or if he had made adjustments to his way of life. It was reported by his co-star Elizabeth Ives that he described dying in the theater on 2 separate occasions when they were in rehearsal. You can't help but wonder whether he was aware of the warning signs, but chose not to seek assistance. A deadly heart attack at the age of 50 indicates that he may have had health problems that may have been handled by medical professionals. At the beginning of the 1970s, the level of medical knowledge was not what it is now. There was a possibility that the doctors had overlooked warning indicators that would now receive rapid treatment. He was unable to maintain his health due to the demanding schedule of theater tours. Performers who were on the dinner theater circuit had difficult schedules that required them to travel to a variety of places. It had been since May 1974 that Sutton had been playing in Shreveport, which meant that he had performed for several weeks before his heart attack. The narrative of an actor who devoted his life to amuse others comes to a heartfelt conclusion during the final minutes of Frank Sutton's life when he collapsed in his dressing room before a performance. His devotion to performing and his passion for his nation remained his defining characteristics till the very end. It's possible that the same attributes that made him so awesome also contributed to the stress that ultimately led to his untimely death. Frank Sutton's military service shaped his identity. Frank Sutton wasn't born a star. He was born in 1923 in Clarksville, Tennessee. A bright student and a natural performer, he joined the U.S. Army during World War II, not just to serve, but to survive. He fought in the Pacific. He saw combat. And when he returned, he poured all of that energy into acting, channeling trauma into triumph. Despite the fact that Frank Sutton became famous for his portrayal of the harsh Sergeant Carter, it was his actual military experience that ultimately formed both his character and the part that he is most remembered for. A change of events in his life that was completely unexpected made his performance as a drill instructor for the Marine Corps even more remarkable. In the immediate aftermath of the assault on Pearl Harbor, Sutton made an attempt to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. The fact that he was colorblind caused him to fail the medical exam, which ended up being a setback for his goals. Because of this issue, he was unable to differentiate between specific colors, which meant that he was unable to join the Marine Corps. This was a difficult blow for someone who was so anxious to serve his nation. Although the majority of people might have given up, Sutton did not. The failure did little more than alter the path that his patriotic ideals were headed in. The same tenacity that would eventually come to characterize his acting career was displayed by him as he searched for an alternative way to serve. The United States Army profited from the loss of the Marines. While serving in the Pacific Theater of Operations during World War II, Sutton demonstrated his worth by participating in some of the most difficult operations. His military record demonstrates how fast he became a valuable soldier despite the fact that the Marines did not accept him for service. Sutton was involved in a significant amount of combat with Japanese soldiers. His regiment frequently found itself in the center of the action when the combat was particularly intense. In the future, the actor demonstrated leadership and fortitude in the face of adversity, qualities that helped him land parts in the military later in his life. Army life contributed to the development of Sutton's signature body. In part, his rough and powerful physique, which he used to scare poor Gomer Pyle, was a result of his participation in military training and confrontation. The commanding qualities he honed throughout his time as a soldier made him an ideal candidate for commanding jobs in the future. Sutton's time spent serving in the military came with a cost. War wounds earned him the Purple Heart, which is awarded to military men who have been injured in combat. In addition, he was awarded the Bronze Star for his valorous conduct in battle, which is evidence of his bravery that goes beyond simply serving in the military. The fact that Sutton received such prestigious distinctions brought to light the gravity and perilous nature of his combat experience. Putting himself in Sergeant Carter's position allowed him to get a priceless insight of the realities of military life, the pressures of war, and the psychological aspects of soldiers. Sutton did not speak about his battle for many years after it had ended. Co-workers who worked with him under the name Gomer Pyle observed that military formality and bearing came effortlessly to him. I once heard Jim Neighbors say that Sutton provided a sincerity that you couldn't study. You had to experience it for yourself. His prior experience in the military provided him with a unique understanding of Sergeant Carter's personality. In contrast to the conventional Hollywood military characters, Sutton managed to strike a balance between the severity of a drill instructor and genuine compassion, which resonated well with veterans. His portrayal, which was overdone with the purpose of generating chuckles, was claimed to have caught something authentic about military leadership by a number of former servicemen. In the end, the war had a significant impact on both his acting career and his perspective on life. He was able to carry with him throughout his whole professional life the discipline, resiliency, and attention to detail that he gained while serving in the Army. Gomer Pyle made Frank Sutton a household name. The year 1964 was the year when Frank Sutton was cast in the part that would permanently solidify his position as a prominent figure in the history of television. After years of performing tiny parts and lesser characters, he finally made a breakthrough performance on Gomer Pyle, United States Marine Corps, in which he played a drill instructor with a fiery temper. He went from being a professional actor to being a cultural icon as a result of this performance. The actor, who is 41 years old, brought to life the aggressive and in-your-face role of Gunnery Sergeant Vince Carter. This character's outward bravado occasionally exposed a more sensitive side from time to time. As a co-star in one of the most popular spin-offs on television, Sutton was finally able to get his due in the limelight. Throughout its entire existence, the show maintained a position in the top 10 ratings on Nielsen. Within the realm of popular culture in the United States, Sutton's portrayal became the embodiment of military power. Because of the genuineness of his performance, the United States Marine Corps bestowed upon him the title of Honorary Sergeant for his ability to amuse service members in military bases, hospitals, and camps. Younger viewers were able to identify with the core via the character, and Marine recruiters remarked that the program had a good influence on the number of people who enlisted. The 5 seasons of the show resulted in the character being more developed. Initially, Carter's relationship with Pyle was one of complete and utter hostility. Yet, as Carter gained respect for his clumsy recruit, the nature of their relationship began to shift. Sutton was able to demonstrate his acting range beyond only yelling and intimidating others as a result of this adjustment. Sutton's combustible persona and his impeccable comedic timing, along with Jim Nabors' clumsy charm, won over the hearts of the readers and viewers. Among the most memorable comedic pairings on television, these two performers established one. Throughout the course of 5 seasons, viewers were entertained by Carter's unsuccessful attempts to transfer Pyle from his unit. They had a profound regard for one another off-screen, which contributed to the success of their on-screen connection. Sutton became a member of the variety show The Jim Nabors Hour in 1969, following the conclusion of the Gomer Pyle program. In comedic routines, he portrayed the role of Nabors' brother-in-law, demonstrating the close professional tie that they share. Jim Nabors expressed his opinion that, "As far as I am concerned, he was a very great man. An extraordinary individual who possesses a significant skill. For a period of 8 years, we collaborated on a daily basis, including 14 hours of work each day," mentioned in the previous section. While attending a variety of public events, Sutton brought Sergeant Carter to life. While in costume, he was the main attraction at circuses. An article published in a newspaper in 1969 provided the following description of his participation in the Zembo Temple Hamid Morton Circus in Pennsylvania. He will arrive at center stage in a jeep in command of a group of Harrisburg-area Marine Reserves. His commitment was demonstrated when he provided financial support for performances for Marines stationed in Vietnam. Over the course of just 8 days, he gave performances in a total of 56 different locations, including Da Nang Chu Lai and Phu Bai. Without receiving any show sponsorship, he also spent his own time traveling throughout the country visiting high schools in order to recruit students. The relationship that Sutton had to the part was expressed as follows: "I created the character." He is a really kind and compassionate person. Regarding the fact that he and Carter share characteristics, he stated, "Well, in some ways, yes. I like to think of myself as a person who is rather kind. It's true that I shout around the home and sometimes even at my kids, but I'm not a tough enough person to slap them. I, on the other hand, have shaped that Sergeant Carter character. He had to be somewhat similar to me, right?" Frank Sutton's reputation will live on as the tough but fair drill instructor who made America laugh for 5 wonderful seasons despite the fact that he had a lengthy acting career. Frank Sutton's post-Gomer career took to the stage. The great run of Gomer Pyle United States Marine Corps came to an end in 1969, and Frank Sutton found himself at a crossroads in his professional life. After leaving their trademark roles, a great number of television stars had a difficult time finding meaningful work. Sutton decided to go in a new direction, which would keep him occupied till the very end of his life. A brief appearance on The Jim Nabors Hour came to an end in 1971 when the show was canceled, and Sutton made the decision to transition away from the television industry. His popularity on the tiny screen was what brought him to the attention of the general public, but he yearned for the instant reaction that could only be provided by live theatrical audiences. He had a history in acting, having received training in classical acting from Columbia University and the Actors Studio in New York. This professional shift was in line with his background. Through live theater, Sutton was able to experience a level of creative freedom that was not possible with the more regimented format of television. Additionally, the shift was successful from a commercial and creative standpoint. On stage, you get to build a character from beginning to end without interruption, he had previously stated. Dinner theater in the United States reached its pinnacle in the early 1970s. Television personalities are able to interact with their followers in person in these settings. Sutton established himself as a fixture on this circuit and went on to appear in productions all throughout the country. The mix of theatrical performances and eating experiences was absolutely adored by the audience, particularly the opportunity to watch their favorite television stars perform in person. In his theater performances, he appeared in comedies such as The Odd Couple and Never Too Late. These positions demonstrated that his versatility extended much beyond the scope of his well-known function as a drill teacher. Theater owners frequently stated that their events were completely sold out, which meant that his name was shown on the marquee. During the month of May in 1974, Sutton began rehearsals for the comedy Love by Murray Shisgall at the Beverly Barn Dinner Playhouse in Shreveport, Louisiana. It had been 11 years since the play with 3 characters had seen popularity on Broadway. With this job, Sutton was able to demonstrate a different side of himself than his Sergeant Carter character. Before that fatal evening of June 28, 1974, the performance had been running well for 2 weekends before that event. Elizabeth Ives, who played his co-star, recalled Sutton's enthusiasm for the project. She described him as being in excellent spirits during the whole practice process. Sutton's dying moments were spent in the theater, which changed the setting. It was the creative form that he selected after television that provided him delight that television could never provide. It was his exceptional abilities that were witnessed personally by live crowds all throughout the United States, and this formed his unforgettable legacy. Frank Sutton's funeral and final resting place. It came as a shock to everyone in the entertainment industry when Frank Sutton passed away unexpectedly at the Beverly Barn Dinner Playhouse. Following the news of the loss of the well-liked television personality, hasty preparations were made to commemorate not just his professional accomplishments, but also his personal effect. At memorial ceremonies held in Los Angeles, members of the entertainment industry in Hollywood gathered to pay their final goodbyes to Sutton. The members of his Gomer Pyle family arrived in significant numbers. In order to pay their respects, members of the core team as well as fellow performers who had worked with him for many years gathered. The Los Angeles funeral provided his Hollywood colleagues with the opportunity to say their final goodbyes to a person whom they held in the highest regard. Because of his unwavering commitment to acting, he had garnered the adoration of everyone in the profession. At the end of his journey, Sutton arrived back at his house. In spite of the fact that he was born and raised in Clarksville, Tennessee, he was able to maintain close links to his hometown throughout his whole career. From Shreveport, his remains were transported to the Greenwood Cemetery in Clarksville, which is a historic location. As a result of this homecoming, the actor was able to return to the place where his incredible journey began on October 23, 1923. Sutton was honored with military honors during his burial service, which was held in recognition of his service during World War II. Local leaders proudly claimed Sutton as their own and attended the event. Later on, his humble burial became a destination for his devoted readers and followers. Following his passing, tributes came pouring in from every nook and cranny of the entertainment industry. As a result of the profound impact that the death of his long-standing co-star had on him, Jim Nabors expressed his genuine feelings regarding Sutton's professionalism and friendship. Other members of the Gomer Pyle cast expressed their sorrow over the passing of a person who was more than simply a partner in the production. There were hundreds of condolence cards sent to Sutton's wife Toby and their children from supporters all throughout the country. A great number of troops, particularly Marines, who believed Sergeant Carter was speaking for them, communicated their sincere emotional comments through veterans' organizations. These testimonials demonstrated how Sutton's portrayal struck a chord with viewers from the civilian population as well as those belonging to the military. What is Frank Sutton's legacy today? Although Sutton's life was cut early at the age of 50, his influence continued to be felt. As a result of his influence on following military-themed comedies such as MASH and Major Dad, he continues to be a model of how to strike a balance between imposing authority and surprising kindness. Through its combination of professional discipline and real character development, his work continues to serve as a source of inspiration for performers. Away from the camera, Sutton was renowned for being a loyal husband and father who was fully involved in the life of his family and the community. As a humble and kind spirit, he discreetly supported charity causes and coached budding performers. He will be remembered for his generosity. In the present day, his legacy is preserved through reruns of Gomer Pyle, United States Marine Corps, while his son, who is sometimes referred to as his carbon copy, continues the family legacy. Sutton's depiction continues to provide spectators with a mixture of amusement, respect, and an underlying humanity, so establishing a legacy that is characterized by resiliency, compassion, and an enduring film presence. Frank Sutton gave everything for his craft, his talent, his energy, and ultimately his life. Should Hollywood have done more to protect actors like him? Let us know in the comments. Give this video a like if Frank Sutton's story deserves to be heard, and hit subscribe to honor the real legends behind the screen. Because sometimes the people who made us laugh the hardest were the ones hurting the most.